Coming up is part 1 of the course from makethattrack.com. As a member of our website, you get access to all the links, presets, samples and loops, and also project files, including MIDI, for all the tutorials on the site. Enjoy this free tutorial and be sure to check us out at makethattrack.com.
Hey guys, welcome to part 1 of our Ableton Progressive House tutorial. In this video, I'm just going to show you how to set up our basic drums and drum beats. And before we get to that, what I'm going to do is show you a couple things that we can do to sort of help us out here and get our project started. So first, what I want to do is adjust the tempo. And by default, it's usually 128, but just in case it's different, up here in the top left, just want to make sure we click and drag this to be 128, because that's going to be the tempo that we're working with here. Okay, next we're going to set up a custom folder so that we can easily pull samples from our browser into our project. So in order to do this, you just click this plus button here. I'm going to go ahead and open this up so we can see the names of our folders. I'm just going to hit the add folder button here. And then it's going to give us a bunch of folders that we can choose from, and we just navigate to the folder we want to use for our custom samples wherever we have those saved. Now I've already set one up, and mine are actually saved into the current project folder. I'm just going to go into there and have that open for now. Okay, so let's get back to the drums. First thing we're going to do is we're going to set up what's called a drum rack, and what that's going to do is allow us to tie a bunch of audio clips to the drum rack device, which will then let us either play the audio with a MIDI keyboard or a MIDI controller, or we'll be able to create a drum pattern within a MIDI clip. So in order to set one up, we're just going to have to make a MIDI track. So we'll right click here over where our tracks are and choose Insert MIDI Track. Now we have an empty MIDI. So all we have to do is go into our instruments on the left here and choose Drum Rack, and then just drag that into the track, or you can double click on it. Okay, and then it's going to set up the drum rack here. It's going to open up that device. And right now it's just all empty. It's just a collection of pads here that we can drag and drop audio clips onto. So let's go into the samples folder and we'll go to drums. Okay, and then we're just going to drag and drop about 5 audio clips into here. So we're going to grab our kick, this clap snare sound. We're going to have a closed hat, an open hat, and another closed hat with some reverb on it. Okay, so now that we have our drum rack set up with our clips, we can click on these corresponding play buttons to play the clips. Or if we press the corresponding note on our MIDI keyboard, we'd be able to play them as well. So the kick would be tied to C1, and as you can see, each pad here is assigned to a different MIDI note. So if you press the corresponding note on your keyboard, you'd be able to play that sound. Okay, so I'm just going to hop over to the drum rack that I already have set up, which is just a duplicate of this. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this extra track here. I'm going to go over to the drum rack that I have set up here. And now what we can do is we can create a MIDI clip and start writing a drum pattern. Okay, so I'm just going to highlight this area and then press Controller, Command, Shift, and M. And it's going to insert a MIDI clip here. And now, if I double click on this, it's going to open up our score editor here so that we can start creating our pattern. Now, if I want to create a note within this score here, all I have to do is double click where I want that note to be. I'm going to double click here and it's going to create a kick. And then I can hold Control or Command and then click and drag on this to copy it. I'll just make one kick for every beat. And I can drag and select all of these and then copy them the same way. Okay. Okay, now let's get our clap snare every other beat. Okay, you'll notice that that's coming in a little bit late, and that's because of the specific sample that we're using. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this black key here, That's just going to select all of the notes within that lane. And we're going to zoom in a little bit. I'm just going to drag it a little bit to the left. Okay, now our clap is in time with our kick. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to write in another pattern here with our closed hat. I'm going to have this happen on every beat and also every upbeat. Okay, but what I want to do is I want to give it sort of a dynamic rhythm here so that the upbeat is a little bit louder than the downbeat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Alt or Option, then I'm going to click and drag on this first note here downwards. And as you can see, the number above it is going to be going downwards, and that's the volume of that note, also known as velocity. I'm just going to bring that way down. Okay, so now I'm going to get rid of these two, and I'm just going to keep copying this pattern here. And as you can see, the less volume note has a lighter color to it. Okay. Okay, now we're going to do our open hat. That's just going to be every beat. And the same for our closed hat reverb. So I can actually click here and to select everything, and then Control or Command, and then click and drag to copy that upwards. Okay, so now that we have our pattern written in, we can go back to our drum rack, and I can show you a few things of how we can tweak some of the settings with our sounds here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to transpose our snare up by a few semitones and basically just increase the pitch a little bit, because I think it sounds a little better at a higher pitch. So I'm going to go over here and click on the snare, clap snare, and for each different pattern that we have here, or different sound that we have a different window here that we can edit the settings of that particular sound. So in our clap snare, if I want to create a higher pitch, all I have to do is go over here to this transpose option. I'm going to drag that up by 4. Okay, so now it's a little bit higher in pitch. The next thing I'm going to want to do is I want to edit our open hat here a little bit. So by default, we have our sustain knob all the way up here, and our decay is at about 300. So let's take a listen to what that's going to sound like. As you can see, that sound is a little bit too dominant with those settings. So what I want to do is I want to bring down the sustain, which is basically going to edit the volume dynamics of the instrument. So it's going to emphasize that initial hit on the instrument more so than the ringing out part of the sound. So I'm going to bring down that sustain by 13. But now the decay is too short. So it almost instantly goes into the minus 13 part of the sound. So I'm going to bring up this decay to about 1,000 milliseconds, or just 1 second. Okay, now we can listen to it before and after by just editing the sustain. So I'm going to bring that back up to 0, which is what it would be at default. And then back down to minus 13. Okay. And next what I want to do is I want to put an EQ on just one of our sounds here because it's a little bit too bright. This closed hat reverb here, it's got a little too many frequencies in the high end and it's really standing out. But if I turn it down, it doesn't give us that same effect, that same ringing out sound that I'm really going for. So I'm going to go into our audio effects. I'm going to drag an EQ in. Now, if I just drag it down here into the track, it's going to affect the entire drum rack. So every sound that we have here. So just take a listen to this. Okay, and what we want to do is cut off the high end for just the closed hat reverb sound here. So in order to do this, we're going to have to drag the EQ into the drum rack here just for that sound. So now if you click on a different sound, you'll see that that EQ disappears. So we know that it's only affecting this sound. So now what I can do is bring down this frequency band here and cut off the high end a little bit. Okay, now I can mute this sound to hear the difference between it being on and off. Okay, and I'm not noticing too much of a difference, so I've probably cut off a little bit too much of that high end. So let's just dial it back a little bit. Okay, now let's take a listen. Okay, now I can definitely tell a difference. Now let's listen to the before and after of the EQ. Okay, definitely making a big difference here. Okay, so that's pretty much going to do it for our drum rack. Now let's get some audio clips in here. I'm going to go back into our samples folder, into our drums. I'm going to get Open Hat 2 and drag that in. Okay, now I want this to happen just before the last snare of every pattern. So I'm going to put it there. Okay. Now I can drag this clip out to repeat it for our drum rack. Let's repeat it for 8 bars now. And so now what I can do is select this area and then press Control Command and D to duplicate. And the Open Hat 2 will be exactly where I want it to be for each collection of 2 bars. Okay, next we're going to get another open hat in here. This is going to be an audio loop. Let's go ahead and grab that and drag it in. Okay, now I could just duplicate this, but if I want to drag it out and loop it, what I have to do is double click on this to open up the clip view, and then just activate this loop option here. Okay, and now I can drag this out as far as I want. All right, and lastly, let's just make this a little bit more interesting with a reverse clap sound. We'll get reverse clap, drag it down into here. Okay, and much like the Open Hat 2, we're going to have this happen just before the last snare of each repetition. So every 2 bars. And this is just a clap, the clap that we have with some reverb on it, and then bounced down into audio and reversed. So let's take a listen to how that sounds. All right. Maybe make that a little bit louder. All right, and that's going to do it for our basic drum beat. In the next video, we're going to be setting up our instruments.
We hope you've enjoyed part 1 of this course. To continue, please go to the website and select a membership to suit your needs. Welcome to makethattrack.com. At Make That Track, we provide everything you need to make your favourite style of music from start to finish. Our Getting Started series will show a complete beginner where to start and what they need to do to start making music out of the box. Once the basics are grasped, you can learn how to make the genre of your choice with everything that you need in the process. Want to know how to make that elusive sound from your favourite producer's tracks? Check out our How to Make That Sound tutorials. We take the guesswork out and show you exactly what you need to do to get that sound within a few simple steps. With tips on arrangement, mixing, mastering and effects, you'll have everything you need to prepare your tracks to send to a record label and to play in the clubs. Get everything you need to make the music you love today.